Think you know everything about parcel shipping? Think again. This is ProShip ParcelCast, the only podcast hyper-focused on parcel shipping for supply chain and IT professionals in the retail, e-commerce, manufacturing, third-party logistics, and healthcare industries. Welcome to today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 34 of the ProShip ParcelCast, Shipping Smart, Navigating FedEx Ground Economy's Transformation. With me today is Tom Thornton and Bill Schroeder. Tom, do you mind introducing yourself?
Thanks, Justin. I'm a technical principal at FedEx. I work in our customer technologies, which is our customer-facing division, and I'm the project lead for the Ground Economy.
And Bill, we all know you as the president of ProShip, but do you mind going into a little bit more depth about yourself?
Yeah, Bill Schroeder, president of ProShip. Prior to ProShip, I worked with ProShip during my tenure at FedEx for approximately 20 some years and saw quite a few changes over those 2 decades.
Excellent. And I'm Justin Cramer, co-founder of ProShip. Many of you know me as well. I'm going to be acting as the host today. Let's dive right in. And my first question goes to Tom. Tom, FedEx Ground Economy, it's not just a name change. What really is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. The FedEx portfolio, as many of our listeners know, started with the expedited service and FedEx Express. And then about 20 some odd years ago, we purchased RPS and made that FedEx Ground. And as we were looking to expand the portfolio, we included freight or LTL. And then we wanted a deferred lower cost option, and we bought SmartPost. And throughout all of the changes that are going on within FedEx and our operational companies, or OpCos as we call them, we rebranded SmartPost as FedEx Ground Economy. And it's to bring it in line to allow our customers to understand FedEx from expedited services to a deferred service and everything in between it, so that they can know that everything, the naming conventions, and everything is aligned with one another.
One of the questions that I've heard a lot from customers, so FedEx has all these different service levels now. How do I really differentiate Ground Economy from like a home delivery or a standard ground?
Sure. And it's a great question, because as you go into these services, they do look a lot alike. You know, many of the times we look at them, it comes down to just the nuances of them. The expedited services are time definite, our ground services, which in FedEx Ground is really aimed more at commercial customers. And FedEx Home Delivery is aimed at our residential customers. But when we added in Ground Economy, we moved it from a 2 to 7 day service to a time definite, but time definite being ground +1. Now, that being said, the ground product delivers Monday through Friday. The home delivery product delivers 7 days a week, and the Ground Economy product also delivers 7 days a week. But it doesn't have some of the advantages that you have in ground home delivery. There's no money back guarantee. There's some of the signature options that are not available, but it is a lower cost, a little bit slower because it's a day over ground transit, but it does allow the customer to be able to offer their customers an option that'll get it there on a time definite service.
Sounds like a lot of choices. Bill, can you step in here and talk about those choices and maybe add a little bit of history here?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the emerging themes in the whole transportation ecosystem has been a growing number of choices and options and services that better fit specific needs that the shippers have. So you look at SmartPost and its history, it was less time definite than ground, but it was better than just going pure postal. It was a combination of both, trying to create a very low-cost service that kind of sat in between a pure USPS parcel and a highly engineered network like FedEx Ground is. And with Amazon coming about and really nailing the, shipping's basically free. You get all your stuff in a couple days. Used to be a few days, now a couple days, trending towards 1 day. The customer expectations changed. And for the shippers to really adjust to the the changing expectations that our customers have, you have to take into consideration a lot of different factors to really optimize your transportation strategy. And that creates a lot of data that feeds the decision matrix and how you're going to ship something, which we're going to get into in greater depth in a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you. Moving on to the next subject. This change has got quite an impact on shipping strategies and practical implications that need to be adopted here. Tom, my next question goes to you. How does the changes from the United States Post Office Ground Advantage impact FedEx or Ground Economy, either one of those?
The Ground Advantage product really, this is my take on it. It would actually merge their Parcel Select and Parcel Lightweight into one product name. It didn't change their transit. It didn't change much of their other services. When we look at this, Bill mentioned that there's plenty of space. There's a lot of offerings out there. It's not, maybe we could look at it as a direct competition, but we feel the FedEx brand and people bringing in their desire to stay within the FedEx brand and the network that we offer, the tracking capabilities, the intelligence that we bring with the data that you give us that we provide back to the customer allows us to provide a superior product. We feel like it's also allows them to, for our customers to have better discounts and better options when they bundle everything together. And so that when they present it to the shipper then has a broader service base to bring to their customer.
Continuing with our conversation about the post office, before Ground Economy, SmartPost, we used to see a lot of delivery with the United States Post Office for final mile. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that is changing when we switch from the old school SmartPost to the current modern Ground Economy?
Sure, and that actually played in a big part in the naming as well. About 2 years ago, the FedEx was delivering, or still is, about 90% of the SmartPost packages. And at that time, the USPS came to FedEx and said, if you're going to be delivering that higher volume, we'd like you to be more a proprietary product. So we redesigned the label. We added the FedEx tracking number as well as the USPS delivery confirmation, or DELCON. So it's what we call a 2-in-1 label. So it's more FedEx centric now, moved away from the post office. We do have the ability to flex into the post office network by having a 2-in-1 label. So if we hit peak, high volume times, we have the ability to move some of the volume into the post office to assist in delivery, and also some of the remoter locations where the post office goes to on a regular basis. Now, we also, just like they do, we also offer APO, FPO, DPO at a reduced rate. We tender it to the post office for final mile, since they're the only approved carrier that could do that kind of delivery. But we get the same transit times as they do, and it allows the customer to stay on one platform.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like a lot of changes. Bill, I'm going to shift over to you here now. With all these changes between, FedEx Ground Economy, we talked a little bit about USPS as well. How does a multi-carrier shipping software, how should it facilitate the adaptation and adoption of these new solutions?
Yeah, a little bit of history on multi-carrier shipping systems, right? They support multiple carriers and they support shipping. Originally, the shipping choices were limited to origin, destination. How much does the package weigh? How big is it, right? And then you'd pick a service that met when you wanted the package to be there. Pretty basic choices, and there weren't a lot of accessorial charges or surcharges, 15, 20 years ago. 10 years ago, those all started to become much more commonplace as the carriers did some finer tuning to, if you fast forward to today, there's dozens of carriers. There's still the big three. There are literally hundreds of service combinations that you could select for any given parcel. So it's a lot of data. How do you pick and choose the optimal network to ship it through, using the optimal service to ship it with? And just focusing in on Ground Economy, you're looking at something that's time definite, no money back guarantee. You're looking at a service where it's going end to end through the FedEx network, or it could be diverted into the postal network for the final delivery. It's what makes sense for that location that you're shipping to. You compare that to something like Ground Advantage from the USPS, it's really best for zones 1 through 5. It's really best for packages no more than 20 pounds. That's what it's kind of tuned for. If you think about the postal carrier van and the network it has to travel through, it's a different engineering network for those specific packages, and it fits better for those. And it's priced appropriately. There are changes to all of those. And then you have to take into consideration, do you want to be able to leverage, hold that location? Are you going to be looking for additional services attached to your delivery, adult signature required? Is there hazardous materials involved, and things like perfume are hazardous materials? We're seeing a lot of that stuff shipped now. So you have to take all of those factors into consideration when you're choosing which network are you going to put this package into. And you can't do those things, by looking at 5 different websites and pricing your package on 5 different carriers. It's a lot of data. And in order to optimize that, make sure you're not spending more than you need to, that's where multi-carrier shipping systems come in. All of your logic, all of your strategy for your optimization of your fulfillment process can be coded into the system so it can intelligently make those choices based on real world market conditions and prices at that time. Very key to take advantage of a new service like Ground Economy from FedEx and fit it into all the rest of your shipping methodologies. You need something like a multi-carrier shipping system to be able to make those decisions so you can fully take advantage of the great services that FedEx offers.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. All right, moving subjects here. So we've talking about this new service. We've talked in broad terms what sets it apart. If we had to give just a 30-second soundbite, what are the key features and benefits you want to ensure somebody listening to this ParcelCast walks away with for FedEx Ground Economy?
I'd say time definite and lower cost. And it goes back to something that Bill was talking about, that the multi-carrier systems and WMS and TMSs do so well, and is rate shop. But rate shop has become much more than just rate. It's become transit and rate. And you present the customer an option to be there on a specific day and a specific price. It puts together a package that allows them to say, that's a service I want, and that's a service I'm going to use. So it actually has a return capability as well on Ground Economy returns. So we can fold that back in so the customer can also provide a label to their shipper, and the shipper can provide that to their recipient, and the recipient has those options to do. So it's a great product, time definite, lower cost, and allows them to have the options that will keep their prices down as well as meet their customers' needs.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. So those of you who have been following ProShip on the trade show floors have noticed we've been talking a lot about carrier rationalization. And I think a lot of things Tom just talked about fits in well. For those of you looking for more information, we do have an article on this called Carrier Risk Mapping, compare 8 carrier risk factors for 6 carrier types. And when we look at this, we really find that a carrier like FedEx falls into multiple carrier types. We touched on the ability to deliver to APO, FPO, DPO, the ability to leverage postal final mile, full-fledged ground, full-fledged express, and international services. With these vast number of capabilities and the large number of other carriers out there, we do strongly recommend that our listeners find that article, read it, and understand how these changes that carriers like FedEx are making really can help them cover more solutions inside your shipping department to ensure that you are properly rationalizing your carriers. All right, let's go ahead and move on to real-time data and decision making. Bill, I'm going to go to you on this one. Why does the tech matter?
So we talked just a second ago about how these are all data points in a decision-making matrix or decision process. And if you just limited the services that you were going to utilize to the big 3 carriers and the number of services that they offer, and then you look at all the origin destinations and then the shipping day that you're sending the package and the day you want it delivered, the number of choices and possible combinations is enormous. A multiple factor of the number of services that your company utilizes on a daily basis times the number of carriers you have. Now, the reason that FedEx is introducing Ground Economy and they have a ground service that's very reliable and they have a home delivery service very reliable is that there's a market demand for it. The same for the Postal Service. And then in the last couple of years since the pandemic, we've seen a slew of regional carriers pop up. And the reason that all of those are happening is because there's demand and there's a need for it in the market. All of those are data-driven decisions. So which ones are you going to use? How are you going to leverage them best so that you can optimize your transportation spend, which is purely a cost center for most businesses. Free shipping's been around for a long time now. We all know it's not free. And chances are anyone listening to this podcast has a freight bill that they pay, right? How do you get the most out of that? And how do you make sure that you're optimizing it? If you can cut 1 or 2% out of that, 1 or 2% that goes right to the bottom line of the company. And that's why it's important that you fully understand the data that's involved, understand what your customer expectations are, and then you have a system that allows you to flexibly adapt to that and to the changing market offerings in such a way that you don't have to completely rip it all out and recode it and put it back in again every time there are new emerging carriers or services that you want to take advantage of. We have one customer in common with FedEx that since they incorporated a multi-carrier system into their fulfillment process, specifically for their e-commerce function, they've seen a 35% decrease in the per unit delivery costs. That's substantial. I'm not going to say that's typical results, but they're very good if you can really take advantage of new service offerings like Ground Economy with the right packages to the right customer. It makes a ton of sense.
That's a great story, but it doesn't take just one piece of software, not just multi-carrier shipping software, in order to truly take advantage of all these changes. Can you talk about any other supply chain tech that should be integrated in order to really take this advantage?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going back with a lot of history in this. But if you think back just not even that long ago, the only time anybody ever thought about how am I going to ship this was at the very end of the line. There was that guy that taped the box up and he went to his World Ship or his FedEx Ship Manager software and he plugged in a bunch of numbers, or he might have scanned a barcode if they were fairly sophisticated, pulls up an order, spits out a label. The decision and the information that can be applied to a good fulfillment strategy starts way sooner than that. It can start as early as the shopping cart. If you really want to push the envelope, you can start before the shopping cart as you're offering promotions to customers. So origin, destination, and how do I choose the best offerings to give that customer for the delivery date they want? Order management systems, WMS systems, shopping carts, TMS systems all depend on parcel execution skill to be able to execute their function. It's a ton of data that doesn't have to be sitting there in a big database. You can generate that on the fly. You can ask the question, how should I ship this? Here's my origin, here's my destination. What are my choices? And then use your strategic decisions that you've made to apply them to that.
Excellent. There's a lot for our listeners to think about there. Finally, let's go back to everybody. We've talked about a lot today. Let's go ahead and put our final thoughts together, our final piece of advice. Tom, as our guest, I think we're going to go with you first. What is your advice that you'd like to ensure everybody leaving this podcast with comes away with?
I'd like everybody to realize that even though we're the carrier, we can't do this alone. We partner with providers that, like ProShip, that offer the expertise, professionalism, and the technology that Bill has described. And in a big part because they provide other data points as well. So they know, customers can know that how much something's going to cube out at or dim out at because of things that the technology that ProShip can provide them. So it's important for the customer to realize that most of the care that you're going to get it from A to B. Now, what do you want? And how do you want it to be? Do you want someone who's got everything in one package they can offer you? so that you can keep your prices controlled, you can see the service levels, or do you want to just step back and throw in a dartboard? So we would like you to, all the customers, to realize that even though they have options, we feel like we provide some of the best, and we partner with the best. So it's a full circle.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. And Bill, what would you like our listeners to go away with?
I have a profound appreciation for what a great time it is to be in the supply chain and logistics space. We've seen more innovation, more change, some driven out of necessity and some driven by simply taking advantage of conditions that presented themselves. But in the last few years, we've seen more change than we saw in probably the decade before that. And I think that's going to continue as the customer expectations continue to evolve and change. In a lot of market areas, Amazon's now driving one day, or in some cases, same day. You can order at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can have it on your porch at noon. I don't think that's going to change. We have the drone technology emerging. I think we're going to see that really materialize as a little bit more than just kind of a high-tech, gee whiz, look at that, it's a marketing opportunity thing. It's a great time to be in this space. Logistics is, at its essence, a data problem that needs technology solutions. I know there's operations involved, there are costs and physical assets involved, but at the end of the day, it is an enormous data problem that has to have technology applied to it to really leverage it for the advantage of any business out there. I think the offering that FedEx has with Ground Economy, it fits in a very good space for a lot of customers who are trying to get a competitive edge, and making sure that Ground Economy is the selected service when it makes sense for the packages you're shipping is important to your bottom line.
I couldn't agree more, especially with the data problem. As we look at the number of carriers, the types of services that are available from each carriers, I really do want to push back. And my 2 cents to leave the audience with is that carrier rationalization. As we see carriers like FedEx reacting to the realities of the market, providing new features which can be worked into your multi-carrier shipping system, into your enterprise software stack, we're not talking just about carrier diversification anymore. Now we're talking about carrier rationalization. Why do you want to keep a certain X number of carriers? So I really think that our listeners should think about that. Take this data that's associated, that we talked about today, about these new services and features, and figure out how does that fit in your overall execution strategy. Do you have enough carriers? Do you have enough services? And are you meeting your own recipients' needs? And with that, I would like to thank you all for attending Shipping Smart, Navigating FedEx Ground Economy Transformation. This has been Justin Cramer with ProShip ParcelCast.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of ProShip ParcelCast. If you'd like to learn more about ProShip multi-carrier shipping software, visit our website at ProShipInc.com or connect with a ProShip parcel expert via email at sales@ProShipInc.com or by calling 800-353-7774. Be sure to subscribe to ParcelCast on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And until next month, happy shipping.